The issue concerning rhythm in Byzantine church music is not something novel. Rhythm is one of the basic features of any type of music, and this is also the case without exception with Byzantine chant. Byzantine music's exclusive use of only the human voice, which accompanies the holy texts, adds even more weight to the importance of rhythm and sets it apart as a major factor of its structural essence. Tonal accentuation is the core of Byzantine music, and this is most evident in the settings of text to music that are of a syllabic composition. There, the structure of the poetic prose dictates with its tonal accentuation the rhythm followed by the composition. It is precisely this fundamental that has led us to turn our attention in this paper to the syllabic composition of Byzantine chant. The other forms of Byzantine composition, in the semi-ornate and melismatic forms, present similar peculiarities but do not pose the same degree of ambiguity as their concise or syllabic counterpart. Early publications with rhythm and the ensuing controversy and overview. As stated, the use of rhythm is not something new in Byzantine music. The assigning of or designation of time measures in printed Byzantine music books, however, is. In the older stenographic pre-1814, 1815 Byzantine chant notation, which consisted only of manuscripts, time measures were not utilized due to the nature of the notation. This practice carried on into the new analytical notation system. It is only at the end of the 19th and the 20th century that publicized Byzantine music books start to appear with rhythm indications in the form of diastoles, bar lines in English. From the earliest books that appear with time measures denoted are those published in the years from 1884 to 1897. The first, which has the measures denoted with numbers 0 and 1, to denote the up and down movement of the hand, thesis arsis, that is the decimos rhythm, and not using the bar lines, is the book that written and published by Alexandros Vizantios, Μουσικών Δωδεκαήμερων, in Constantinople in 1884. Technically speaking, however, this edition does not separate the pieces one by one with bar lines. Its author makes it known from his preface that he went into great care to standardize the rhythm into equal rhythmical measures. Thus, in the introduction, he tells us that the three teachers, when they invented the new system of Byzantine musical notation, left the issue of rhythm and the counting of time half complete. Therefore, when he refers to the stichirarikon, he states that although no rhythm is added to the printed books, it is more than likely that Iakovos the Protopsaltis, writing these ornate melodies in his Doxastarion, would have known or been aware that his melodies are to be chanted in the tetrasimos compound rhythmical time. Similarly, for the Eurologikon type of melody, again he makes the point that no rhythmical indications are written in the books, and the case is similar in the Papadikon melodies, for which each chanter performs, quote unquote, unfortunately, them as one pleases. Thus, Byzantios publishes his book in the simple didysmos rhythm. Following in is part of that example here. Εδώ είναι το παράδειγμα. Αυτό γιατί μου το πηδάει. Τι γίνεται εδώ πέρα. Γέλα λίγο εδώ πέρα, πάτε να το ρυθμίσει αυτό. Το πάει κατευθείαν κάτω.
Με την μπάρα στα δεξιά θα είναι καλύτερα.
Αυτό εκεί πέρα θέλω να δείξω. Θα σε μεγάλο όμως. Α, απ' την μπάρα από τα δεξιά, ναι. Εντάξει, σωστά. Εκεί, εντάξει. The first books to be divided clearly into measures of rhythm are those of the Protopsaltis and teacher of music in Athens, Ioannis Sakelaridis. His books, written either in Byzantine chant or staff notation, were published for both chanting and teaching. Let us state, however, from the outset that in this paper we are mainly interested with his books written in Byzantine chant notation. Thus, his books over the years came to be used widely by both his students and many others for the regular church services due to their availability and clarity of rhythm. From Sakellarides' earliest books that we were able to study and ascertain that it was separated into measures of rhythm, include his booklet for the Paraclesis published in 1895 titled «Η μικρά και μεγάλη παράκλησης». In this booklet, the small and great paraclesis are written out and set into simple tetrasmos rhythm measures. Only the prokeimenon and the music settings of the exapostyraria are left without such indications. This is a practice followed by him in similar compositions in his other publications, as we shall see following. Worth noting in these exceptions is his choice not to use bar lines in the hymns. So when he excludes bar lines, he has no rhythm indications at all. Other works of Sakellarides with wide circulation in Byzantine musical notation are those published in the years 1902-1903, titled Ιερά Υμνοδία and Αγιοπολίτης. The book Ιερά Υμνοδία contains an explanatory introduction concerning hymnody, Όσα εις Υμνοδία. There, Sakellarides explains, among other issues, first his choice to mark the music with bar lines for the student's convenience. Secondly, he explains that the rhythm to be followed when chanting the melodies is compound time. But according to whether they are stichirarikos or ηρμολογικos melodies, there are differences in their rhythmical forms. Thus, for the stichirarikos, Sakellarides says that compound time measures should be used, and even 2 times compound time measures for the closing cadences, and for the syllabic or ηρμολογικos melodies, simple time. And thirdly, Sakellarides' reason for why he sparingly uses trismos rhythm is that because trismos has a tawdry, indecent and sordid ethos. This is clearly his subjective view on the subject, however. Concerning the issue of trismos rhythm, as we have had the chance to see above, Sakellarides does not only restrict it to these melodies. One more characteristic example is the troparia that follows Psalm 50, for which psalm he presents only to be chanted in the form that we are accustomed to perform when a stichos precedes a troparion. He has no measures of rhythm designated and just labels them rhythmoidi, in other words, with rhythm. In the Agiopolitis collection, which is separated into various volumes, tefchi, in the first volume, he has indicated and measured the tetrasimo rhythms, again with exceptions. But in volume 3, the Pentecostarion has no separation of the rhythm at all, which is interesting, which is in the same year. However, in the first 2 volumes where the tetrasimos measures are overwhelming, they are not used in a number of cases. That is, for the exapostylaria, the diomela καθίσματα, for the efimnion of the antiphons of major feast days, and in the apolitikia. This is a practice followed, interestingly, by Sakellarides in his past publications, preceding the ones in the Byzantine music notation, that were in the 5-staff notation. So it's a similar practice followed in his 5-staff notation publications. There he avoids what he avoids doing in Byzantine music notation. Another late 19th century publication is that of the Bishop of Pelagonia, Kosmas of Maditos, titled Pimenikos Avlos, published in Athens in 3 volumes. Kosmas's volume 1 is a theory book where he expounds many issues, including those of time, rhythm, tempo, and the performance of the 3 forms of chant composition, papadikon, stichirarikon, and homologikon. In his 2nd volume, he has a collection with his own compositions, Polyelei, Katavasi, and so on, and a section of compositions with hymns of the Divine Liturgy. In this 2nd volume, Kosmas, on 2 occasions, on the 1st and 2nd composition, notes the rhythm in a 2-fold manner, rhythmos dissimos, and he uses the 2-4 from the Western notation, and rhythmos tetrasimos, which he indicates with 4-4. And in the subsequent pieces, he writes only rhythmos dissimos without a 2/4 preceding that. In his third volume, written for school children, Kosmas has both church hymns and school songs, all denoted in Byzantine musical notation, and all these compositions are divided into rhythm measures of time. Interestingly, volume 2 of Kosmas' Pimenikos Avlos contains only ecclesiastical hymns. He notes the rhythm to be used only with such indications as rhythmos dissimos 2/4. Thus, although at the beginning of the composition he uses time signatures of Western musical notation, he avoids separating these compositions with bar lines per se. In the late 19th century, another book, this time by Nikolaos Paganas, titled Musiki Pedagogia, was published in the city of Constantinople in 1897 for use in schools, and with the measures of time of rhythm marked. The book consists of hymns and school songs, all written in Byzantine musical notation. However, there is a novelty in Paganas's book, and it is twofold. Firstly, that he uses exclusively, with one exception, the dissimos rhythm, 2/4, for the entire collection, and secondly, his own particular style of writing the music, which does not follow generally the customary musical norms, for which he was, as we shall see following, repudiated. This book, with its sweeping statement in the prologue, την Patριον Μουσικήν ασχολουμένης, claiming to be the first to write Byzantine music utilizing measures of time for rhythm, and Paganas's emphasis that it was under the auspices of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, although his critics claimed that it was not, caused quite a stir in Constantinople in the year 1897 and following. This event is related to us in the minutes and correspondence of the Εκκλησιαστικού Μουσικού Συλλόγου, published in the Παράρτημα Εκκλησιαστικής Αληθείας. There, in a number of essays, we get an idea of the events that took place, since this was an issue that helped to trigger a wider discussion on the subject of rhythm in Byzantine music. Now, let us see some details. Πόση ώρα έχω για να κάνω μια περικοπή? 6 λεπτά. In the first essay, we read that Paganas was accused of distorting, corrupting the melodies and rhythm of the hymns. Hence, the final recommendation decision of the special technical committee announced by the Ecclesiastical Music Society was to repudiate Paganas's book in no uncertain terms. The text of the society in the Greek original reads, «Απεδοκίμασε και απεκήρυξε το διαλειφθέν μουσικών βιβλίων ως παραφθύρων και παραμορφούν το αρχαίον μέλος και ως καταστρέφων των ρυθμών και την γραφή της καθημάς εκκλησιαστικής μουσικής». However, the other three essays contained therein and written by Georgios Pachtikos and the two chanters Polychronis Pachidis and Theodoros Gaitanakis differentiated to a lesser or greater extent the position. But why did this book create such a stir? It is quite possible that the publication of Nikolaos Paganas's book caused such a commotion since it was published by the Patriarch's printing press, giving it extra weight when it came to be disseminated in the Greek communities of Constantinople, Greece, Europe, and the provinces of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. However, let us not forget that this is a point in history where in the liberated parts of Greece there was a conflict between the traditionalists, that is, those for using Byzantine chant in the daily services, against the modernists, those in favor of using the staff notation for the hymns. The main protagonist for this second group in Athens was none other than Sakellarides, with his multitude of publications in staff notation. Coming back to the musical committee, though, of the Ecclesiastical Music Society, that stated a number of very important facts in their essay concerning rhythm in the hymns used in Byzantine chant. Although the committee's members go into some detail about ancient Greek musical rhythm, of more interest to us is what the musical committee had to say about the use of rhythm. Thus, they claim if one were to study the original manuscripts and notes of the three inventors and translators of the new analytical method of writing, they would ascertain that in Bernstein chart a variety of rhythmical forms exists. Hence, they proceed to deconstruct Paganas's use of decimos rhythm in the following words, quote, "When Paganas talks of rhythm, he means, as is shown by the way he has divided his melodies, only the decimos rhythm, and it is to this rhythm that he restricts all the concise melodies because he believes that only in the rhythm are the torparia chanted smoothly. Thus, when he is unable to conform into his decimos rhythm the characteristic concise melodies, he adds or subtracts in the greatest of ignorance beats to the melody and consequently turns the trissimos rhythm into decimos, destroying both the rhythm and the melody and introducing music and schemes that are to be found only in choirs where cantors with little to no knowledge are members. This concept, however, is only excusable to those chanters that are musically illiterate. How were these events that took place in Constantinople possibly connected, if at all, with the shape and form of the publications that follow this conflict, and more specifically to those of Ioannis Sakellarides? We can most probably assume that Sakellarides was informed of the other editions in 1897, mentioned above, and had seen or had copies of these books, and was up to date with the official renouncing of Paganas's book in 1899. This may have prevented him from standardizing further a number of other hymns with asymmetrical measures of rhythm in his work into the tetrasimos rhythm. In the second volume of Παράδειγμα Εκκλησιαστικής Αρθίδας, there's an article there by Komninos Ananitis, where he tells us that he subtracts κλάσματα to conform into his tetrasimos. There we see a troparion, which for him to fit into the tetrasimos rhythm, he subtracts beats from the various bars of music. That's the first example that we have there. Μεγάλη των μαρτύρων σου Χριστέ η δύναμης. Then we have, basically I only have 2 minutes, so I'm going to have to move on. Another example here of how this has been the Evropasa Ectisis, it's been cut and shown to be fitted into decimos rhythmos, and this is from one moment. This is an example of how someone's idea of fixing the melody of the original melody is the one eteron των δασκάλων, and the supposed corrected melody is the one following. As we can see here, the melody changes somewhat, particularly in the second and third lines of music. So linking with the previous to the last paper, there is the issue of should we keep the melodies as they've come down to us, or should we do we have the option to correct them and make them better? This is another.
Έχει περάσει τώρα η ώρα, πρέπει λίγο να.
5 λεπτά δεν μπορεί να έχω. This is the troparion set into 2/4 rhythm ταχύ προκατάλαβε, which of course is very awkward. Δεν γίνεται όμως έτσι. Πώς θα γίνει? Just talking from the examples here, in another, these examples are out of the Παράδειγμα και Συστικής Αρετίας, where a number of papers were presented on rhythm and how people tried, and chanters of the day tried to supposedly correct the hymns. Here we have 2/4 time again, denoted. To get to the, moving on. This is a publication. We start having bar lines introduced into the published books, mainly in the 20th century, and for the τρισιμός ρυθμός, as you can see here. The τετράσιμος ρυθμός, as yet in the publications of the Zoe, are not indicated. They will be indicated later on. As we can see from here, this is from the book of Zoe again, from the Anastasimatari, where the supposed 4/4 time is being used. Other books, of course, before the Zoe used and utilized the music with diastoles. This is from the book of Ftimiadis. Here we start having the use of supposed compound time. This is out of the book of Ftimiadis, as we can see.
You have to conclude, please.
And this is another last example that we have from Simon Karas, how he depicts in syllabic melodies compound rhythm. As we can see there, he has there the separation of the musical lines. Let's go to the concluding remarks. From the use of no separation to the use of full rhythmical compound time markings for rhythm Byzantine in Byzantine chant, over a century of Byzantine musical history has evolved. Controversy and condemnations gave way to research and study on the subject. The gradual acceptance of denoting at first reluctantly the tetrasimos, the trisimos and tetrasimos in publications and other compound rhythms, slowly created a tradition that has led to its particular full quote-unquote acceptance. At first there were many obstacles to be overcome, the most important being the absence of sufficient theoretical basis for rhythm in 19th century theory books. Then the lack of agreement in what rhythms were the ηρμολογικών, στιχηραρικών and papadικών melodies to be chanted made this task even harder. Even today, one is reluctant to claim that a general consensus exists on the subject of rhythm, however. I believe we are well on the way to a standard view on this matter. So coming back to the original question, as the title of this paper states, is it advisable to use compound time rhythm measures in syllabic composition? The short answer is yes. This also seems to be the view of the official Church of Greece, if one is to interpret correctly the recent financing and republication of the books of the late Archon Protopsalis Konstantinos Pringos, corrected and denoted in the compound time. Under the auspices and publication label Apostolic Diaconate of the Church of Greece. The official position of the Ecumenical Patriarchate on the issue remains to be seen. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.